Hi, my name is Bryan Greene. If you've been to this channel before, you've seen my thesis project from SVA, School of Visual Arts. I made a short flash animation based on symptoms I have of my mental health issues and an interview from my thesis advisor, Trilby Schreiber, who was a wonderful person to work with. In the video, I talk about having schizophrenia, and I've been diagnosed since 1997, 98, something like that. So it's been a long time, and I've learned how to not even manage it, but deal with it. I think things like people's names out loud, thinking about, putting things inside me or putting things around me, sort of like the Force, but without the lightning. Well, sometimes there's involuntary thinking, which can be considered sort of lightning. As far as my artwork, I make self-portraits. I try to make portraits in my sketchbook, but I don't really pursue it too far because I don't like when people complain that I don't draw them the way they look, or if I do, they consider it not a real picture of them. So yeah, I make self-portraits, and what I do is I set up a camera. I set up a camera, and the camera has a timer, and I set the timer. I pose and take the picture. Then I take the picture into the computer, and I have two monitors. I have a monitor for looking at the subject matter, and then a monitor that I draw the subject matter on. So then once the drawing is done, I take it, print it. I have a large format printer. I print it out, and then I have the print mounted onto aluminum, and then I prime the whole surface, and then after I've primed the surface, I paint over it. So it's not technically drawing and painting, but it's digital drawing with traditional painting. So I'm a graduate of SVA, and yes, I have both a BFA and an MFA from the School of Visual Arts in Manhattan. I had started going there in 1992, and I went from there from 92 to 93, and then I started getting sick, and I started making wrong decisions, and I ended up really screwing my life up for a while, until I was able to come back to school at 2000, and then I finished up with school in 2002 for BFA. Then I went to work. I worked a job for 2 years, Metropolitan Museum of Art as a guard. I worked there 2 years. I worked the first 6 months I worked on the floor of the museum, and then graduated to the night shift, and I did the night shift for about 1.5 years until I wanted to go to graduate school for digital painting, because I had been making digital paintings in my basement, which was my studio at the time, and my parents' basement, not mine. So I started making little still life drawings on the computer, and I wanted to pursue it even further, so I went to SVA and got my MFA in digital painting. Well, not digital painting, digital animation, but it's mostly digital painting, because the part of the animation, it was based on self-portraits I had made in the computer. At that time, this is 2004 to 2006, at that time the technology was at the beginning of what digital drawing and digital painting was for me, who was self-taught, Photoshop did not come easy, but I learned how to use it, and it allowed me to make my thesis project on time, and I was very intent on that, more than just staying and learning, but I wanted to graduate on time. Yes, I make self-portraits. The self-portraits are easier because that's the printer. Yes, I make self-portraits. I think self-portraits mainly because when I draw other people, they don't necessarily like how I draw them. I have a style that's very unique, but not flattering. A woman who I went to graduate school with, I asked her if I could draw her, because I was going to draw the whole class, and she was like, she was upset, and I guess I was overconfident at the time. I was like, oh, I don't need to warm up. I don't need to do that. First drawing is always the best. It's not necessarily true. So this particular person was upset with me, and she had every right to, because, and that's not the first time that's happened. At the gallery that I belong to, I thought I would take pictures of all the artists and draw them, and again, I was overconfident, and I said to myself, oh, I'll just draw, and whatever I draw, it will be fine. And that's not the case. And you just, if you're watching this and you're new to being an artist, always make 3 or 4 different drawings before you start the final one. So I have this thing. My main interest in art is German Expressionism. I like Gustav Klimt and Egon Schiele. Egon Schiele is probably the closest inspiration to me, but Gustav Klimt, I love his gold. I love his abstractions in the corners of the paintings. Stuff like that really interests me. Also, contemporary artists, I'm not too familiar with. I mean, I know like comic book artists, I know illustrators, I know things that artists like, so yeah, comics started my whole interest in art. It was from Andy Capp and the Hot Fries bags, where there was a little a comic on the back of the bag, and then there was I was one of those Gen Xers who was into Transformers and G.I. Joe, and Marvel had comic books that went along with the toys, and that interested me in getting into comics. And then I started reading X-Men, I started reading Spider-Man. I never really got into DC. DC was a little bit too much for me. But Marvel was definitely my main focus. Mutants, X Factor, X Force. I would buy. It wasn't necessarily for collecting though. I was more interested in the story and the art. And the stories really made me interested in buying back issues, not because I wanted to collect them, but because I wanted to read them. And reading them was really much more enjoyable than reading at a regular book, because of various things that the Yonkers school system put me through, which was demeaning to my self-esteem about how I read and how I retain information. Right now, last night I was reading, and I finished a book called Ready Player 2 by Ernest Cline. And Ernest Cline has written 2, Ready Player 1 and Ready Player 2 are 2 books in that in a simulacra genre, where there's a simulation in the computer and people are interacting with their simulated worlds. Uh, right now, I started a new book, Bram Stoker's Dracula. This is it's a cloth-bound covered Penguin Classics book. But I've seen the movie, but I never read the story, so I'm gonna start reading that. Comic book artists that I admire are like obviously Mike Mignola, because he's like I think he's the most creative out of all of those guys, that generation of artists. Even though he's the most insecure. But I also like Jim Lee, Howell Portasio, Todd McFarlane. The Image guys really was what I was into at the time I stopped reading comics, which is about 92, 93, because of the fact that they went off and made Image, and then Image was just like, it was good art, but it wasn't really good storytelling. So I was just like, all right, forget it. I'm not going to bother with comics anymore. And I started collecting, instead of collecting comics, I started collecting monograms by artists at museums. So I have like Egon Schiele's sketchbooks. I have a book on Picasso. I have a book on Lucas Samaras, various other artists, contemporary artists, Chuck Close, Elizabeth Murray, Frank Stella, stuff like that. Also, I have a thing about writing. I like to write sometimes. I'm not very good at it, and in fact, I'm really bad at it. I just finished up a class in SVA, and it was quite awful. And painting, yeah, I'm a trained, I don't know, I've been classically trained painter, I guess. I'm not really good at it either. But drawing is my best suit, and it's like my first love. I can pretty much draw anything I see, and then I try to draw what I imagine in comics. I don't know if you can see that or not, but anyway, I'll go over it later in another vlog. So what am I doing today? Today I'm talking. I'm just going to talk for a while and see what happens. I'm usually not a videographer or vlogger. I just got this camera, and I'm trying to figure out exactly how to do this the right way. So I'm hoping that it will work out.